Who can deny that swords are cool? And perhaps the coolest swords are lightsabers. But one thing I think really makes a sword look cool is when it looks functional, practical, and believable. Fantasy swords rarely do because, typically, those who are designing them don't know the first thing about sword designs. As I enjoy the masterful engineering displayed in historical sword designs, I think a functional sword looks better than a non-functional one ever could. So I'm going to redesign lightsabers to make them more realistic. Now, of course, there's the classic argument,
"That was called fantasy! It's meant to be unrealistic, you myopic manatee!"
Yet I'd counter that by saying that those who say that actually don't understand fantasy. Fantasy is supposed to be realistic and to have a logic. That realism and logic may differ slightly from the actual world, but they still exist. For example, the Force isn't realistic, but Jedi still have to eat food, and some form of breathing is still necessary, and gravity still exists. My point is, in fantasy, most things are normal. Most of the laws of physics are still in play, and those new elements which do exist usually have to abide by those laws. As another example, a lightsaber can cut through most anything, but it still has to touch the object it's cutting through. Logic still remains. Of course, creating a fantasy where the specific laws I've mentioned don't exist is perfectly fine, but then other laws that I didn't mention will still exist. Whenever a fantasy eliminates or modifies some aspect of reality, it gives a rationality. These people can move objects with their minds because there's a mystical force which connects all things. Fantasy doesn't just say, these people don't need to eat food, without giving an explanation as to why. Whenever there is a change, that change is noted and applied to the logic of the world. Keeping that in mind, I think it's perfectly reasonable and a fun project to introduce some realism to these lightsaber designs. Now, for this video, I will only be critiquing and redesigning lightsabers as they appear in the live-action films. I know there are a lot of other designs out there, but maybe they'll get their own video sometime. Live-action Star Wars presents 4 distinct lightsaber designs. There's the standard hilt, the double-bladed lightsaber, the duelist hilt, and the hilt with a crossguard. All other design differences are merely aesthetic or so minor they're not really worth their own separate category. Looking across these designs, there's at least one common design flaw. That is, the hilts being round. Though the duelist hilt is bent, all the hilts are cylindrical, and that's simply the wrong shape for a grip. The grips of actual swords are never circular, but often oval, sometimes even having defined edges. Now, to preempt any comments about edge alignment, yes, I know, edge alignment isn't relevant to lightsabers as they're a beam rather than a blade. Ignoring edge alignment, however, doesn't take away the need for a non-circular grip. Make a circle with your hand. Now make an oval. Which one do you think gives you a better grip? Due to the shape of human hands, the tighter it closes, the more of an oval or even a rectangle the hand forms. This isn't a question about real-world designs versus fantasy designs, it's a question of ergonomics, and last I checked, most everyone in Star Wars has human-shaped hands. An oval grip allows for more comfort and for a firmer hold. We actually see in the behind-the-scenes that the actors lost hold of their props often. Well, had they had a proper design, the actors may have been able to hold on better. And of course, dropping a prop only means a retake, while dropping a lightsaber could mean death for a Jedi or Sith. This narrower grip will also give the hand more room to maneuver the weapon, allowing for more intricate swordplay. Thus, whether using strength or finesse, an oval grip is the best way to go. We actually see Ahsoka Tano's lightsabers and the Darksaber designed this way in The Mandalorian, but these are unique among live-action examples. This means that with that one small change, these 2 lightsabers are hands down the best designs. So, for creating my own design, I'll start here. Perhaps you'll bring up a baseball bat. Though not a weapon, here is a tool which is swung with incredible power, and it has a round grip. In fact, a number of bludgeoning weapons have rounded grips, though not all of them do. Well, there's a couple things to note. First, when swinging a bat, you aren't going to block incoming attacks or try to circle your blade around your opponent's blocks. Even when not going for finesse, there's a lot more precise movements, changes in movements, and collisions with a weapon than with a bat. Even bludgeoning weapons don't typically see as much finesse-based combat as do swords. Sword designs are almost universally finesse-based, and the intricate blade work necessary to perform these actions requires a firmer grip. No, a round grip doesn't make a lightsaber useless, but an oval grip would be better, and I'm looking to design the best hilt I can. I've also held many toy lightsabers, and they're far from ergonomic. In fact, some are painful to use with all their strange protrusions and random ridges. This one is the most comfortable, and it's the plainest and skinniest. I know the toys are somewhat wider than the actual props, but shrinking it down will make for a stronger and more comfortable grip. The second thing to note about bats is they have a cap at the end of the grip. The backhand can rest on and even push against this, securing the grip and adding force to the swing. Some swords implement similar designs for the same reason, so my next redesign recommendation would be to add that in. I don't imagine that there's much friction when cutting through something with a lightsaber, but having a little extra to push as you pull through your swings certainly can't hurt. The next variation of lightsaber revealed in the Star Wars films is the double-bladed lightsaber. I've said in another video that this is a bad design, and I'll readily say it again. There is nothing redeemable about this lightsaber. You can't wield this weapon effectively as a sword or as a staff. It's the worst of both worlds. If you wanted to fix it as a sword, you should simply undo the changes made and make it a standard lightsaber. Swords need mobility, and a second blade like this simply prohibits too much swordplay. Interestingly, using an extended grip like this isn't a bad idea with actual swords. A long grip with a single blade allows for shifting hand positions, thus allowing for more torque for extra power or a sudden bit of extra reach. If, however, you wanted to fix this as a staff, I'd suggest mobile grips. If the grips could slide up and down, somehow tethered together with an ever-adjusting beam, then I think that would work and would be incredibly awesome. How would the technology work? I don't know or care. This is where the argument, it's fantasy, is allowed to take place. The second unique alternative to the standard hilt is the duelist hilt. Fencing grips were considered for this design since Christopher Lee was trained as a fencer. As you may expect, since it was from an actual grip design, it's a good modification. The curved grip design appears in many historical weapons. It is, once again, ergonomic and allows for more finely controlled blade work. This shape also allows for more torque in cutting actions as you can press on the curvature while making the strike. This curved design is mostly found in one-handed grips. This is because the ergonomic and torque benefits aren't as significant when the design is stretched out. As lightsabers are mostly two-handed, I would think the choice between curved and straight hilts would be based more on personal style than anything else. I, however, have always protested the idea of lightsabers being two-handed weapons. I know the reason is that they were modeled after a katana, which is a two-handed weapon, but the benefits of being two-handed are almost entirely lost when using a beam instead of a blade. The reason to make a two-handed sword has to do with control. The weapon is too long or heavy to wield practically with one hand, so make it two-handed. Well, considering the length and width of a lightsaber beam doesn't change its weight, this isn't an issue. So that brings us to the matter of strength. You can obviously hit harder with two hands than with one, yet with a lightsaber, there are very few reasons anyone needs to hit harder. As lightsabers can cut through most everything with ease, having that extra oomph of a second hand isn't necessary. True, this added strength can help you batter through an opponent's defenses, but swordplay is a martial art, and martial arts are all about displacing attacks rather than meeting them head-on. Sure, powering through is sometimes an option, but redirecting the energy of an attack is a whole lot easier than stopping it. This is Martial Arts 101. To stop a force head-on means you'll have to at least match the strength of that force. If you meet that force at an angle, you only need the force required to push the attack out of the way. It's a whole lot easier to push a lightsaber the few inches you need for it to miss than to bring it to a standstill. I'm not going to say the extra strength of using two hands is useless, but it is extremely minimal when talking about lightsabers. But what are the benefits of using a one-handed style? First, reach. Try it. Hold something in one hand and reach out as far as you can. Then do the same while holding on with both hands. The left hand can't reach as far right as the right hand, nor can the right reach as far left as the left. If you were to trace a circle with one hand, it would be significantly larger than if you traced it with both hands. Second, finesse. Again, you can demonstrate this yourself. Grab a ruler or something like that and make some quick small circles like this. See if it's easier with one or two hands. One-handed swordplay is, quite simply, superior. With two hands, you are almost literally tying your hands together. Since the benefits of two-handed weapons are almost entirely lost with a lightsaber, and since the benefits of one-handed weapons aren't lost at all, I don't see why the vast majority of lightsabers aren't one-handed. So, for my design, I'll go with a one-handed grip and make it curved since the curved design works so well with one-handed weapons. I'll add an extension though, just in case someone wants to use two hands. Such extensions have been used historically. That way you can have the best of both worlds. I know you can hold a lightsaber in one hand, but hilts designed for two hands are often less comfortable in one hand than those designed for one. So the single-handed design with an extension is the most practical and comfortable way to have both. That brings us to our final unique design in live-action Star Wars, and that is Kylo Ren's cross hilt. Now, I know a lot of people who have mocked this design, but I absolutely love it. I have been wanting lightsabers to have guards for decades and was so thrilled to finally see one. There are historical swords which don't use guards, but they are certainly the minority. In my personal experience with swords, the absence of a guard was incredibly unnerving, so I'm certainly siding with the majority on this and putting a guard on all my swords. Now, one reason swords didn't have guards was because they were made in the age of firearms, like this Fleesa here. They didn't anticipate much fighting with other melee weapons, so didn't feel the need to defend against them. This reason could be used to explain the lack of guards on lightsabers. But if there's such a thing as a duelist hilt, then I presume there's an idea that someone will be using a lightsaber against another melee weapon. So, since I don't see any downsides to having a lightsaber guard, I'm going to include one, as there are clear benefits to having it. Those who protest this design make two arguments. First, the quillions will cause the wielder harm, and second, the emitters are exposed and so will easily be cut off. Addressing the quillions, I believe this is a non-issue. In my decades of experience with various swords, I have never once hit myself with my own guard. Here's a sword with a crossguard with very long quillions, longer than Kylo Ren's, I believe. And as you can see, you have to tilt the blade all this way before it touches my arm. If you don't think this is a lot, keep in mind, despite what movies may tell you, you don't strike at people by moving backwards. Attacks move forward and defenses move back to the initial position. Sure, there's the potential of a mistake or it being pushed back into my arm, but that same potential exists with the blade itself. I don't think there's any greater risk of self-harm with a lightsaber guard. And if someone is using this with two hands, there's no way those quillions are hitting my arm. The blade here is resting on my shoulder, and my arms are just fine. Addressing the protrusions for the emitters. This is a fair criticism, yet I would rather have partial protection than no protection. Besides, perhaps a lightsaber-resistant material is used. If so, this design could allow for this alternative grip style, a style which was exceedingly popular historically as it allowed for greater control and, you guessed it, torque. So, for my lightsaber design, I will absolutely have a guard. That makes the question, what kind? Historically, the most sophisticated guards were these which encompassed the entire hand. A very solid protection which could work well if it weighs nothing. Perhaps a wrist emitter can connect to the hilt, allowing a shield bubble to encircle the hand. Not only is this a great defense, but then close-quarter punches would be lethal. But maybe we're not going to allow curved or fluid shapes. Maybe, according to our science fiction, lightsaber emitters can only make straight lines. What guard design would be used in that case? Well, first, a knuckle guard is a simple yet effective design. This design was used on historical sabers, in fact, so why not use it on a lightsaber as well? The punching potential is still there, too. Harkening back to its katana influence, we could use a disc guard, like the tsuba. This simple design is very commonly featured historically, as it gets the job done. A small shield right in front of your hand. If discs aren't allowed, we could have a cross, X, or some variation to that design to create the same effect. Alternatively, we could have forward-swept quillions, thereby having the same protection while also being able to pin your opponent's blade in the angle. We can even add these loops to allow for that alternative grip without exposing the fingers. And for those wondering about the second hand, this sword has the grip extension out of the guard, thus allowing the guard to remain small and simple while still having a two-handed option. The backhand is naturally more protected than the front is, but if you want, you can always extend the knuckle guard. For the final touch, we can add a light pommel. Though used as a counterbalance to a blade, these were also used in close quarters to bludgeon the enemy, so why not bring that technique back? It's not so long a blade as to get in the way like the double-bladed, it's just a nice option when the occasion arises. So there you have it, my proposed lightsaber design. What do you think? How would you improve the original lightsaber? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, that's all from me. Thanks for watching.